Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's operational information update on the flooding and landslide situation in BC. For today's briefing, we will have updates from Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure, Rob Fleming, and Minister of Agriculture, Food and Fisheries, Lana Popham. We will also have on hand for questions Armel Castellan, Warning Preparedness Meteorologist with Environment and Climate Change Canada, Andrew Giles, River Forecast Centre, Ministry of Forest Lands and Natural Resources, Ashok Badi, Executive Director, South Coast Region, Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure, and Steve Surrett, Deputy Director, Southern Interior Region, Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure. A reminder to media on the phone line, please press *1 to enter the queue. You're limited to 1 question and 1 follow-up. I will now hand it over to Minister Fleming.
Great, thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm grateful to join you from the territory of the Lekwungen-speaking people, the Songhees and Esquimalt First Nations. Today, Minister Farnworth is in the Princeton area meeting with local officials and all those who are involved in the recovery efforts there. Thankfully, the heavy rains appear to be behind us, although many flood evacuation alerts and orders remain in place for now. For today and the weekend, Environment Canada is predicting wet snow for East Vancouver Island, the Malahat, Victoria, Vancouver, Howe Sound, and the Fraser Valley. And snow is also predicted for northwestern British Columbia, as well as the southern interior and southwest areas of the province. There are currently no flood watches or flood warnings in effect. We appear to be moving into more seasonal cold weather that we're used to seeing in early December. With the extreme weather now past us, we continue to see more stability on our highways network. Since it reopened yesterday, Highway 1 through the Lower Mainland has moved well. This is an unusual time, though, and I urge everyone who must travel to drive with caution. Last night, we had a rock slide on Highway 12, closing the road between Lytton and Lillooet. Crews are on site now, clearing debris. We do hope to have Highway 12 open later today. Highway 99 between Pemberton and Lillooet will remain closed today as a result of a slide that occurred Wednesday evening. Fortunately, all the other routes that are open in some capacity are operating well. That includes Highway 3 east of Princeton, where floodwaters have now receded, allowing that route to resume to two-way traffic. Since the first storms hit almost 3 weeks ago, British Columbians have been doing the right thing. They've been making the right choices that put their communities first, whether that's reducing fuel use or avoiding driving on roads impacted by weather or moderating their purchases. When we were working to get supply chains up and running, it's been a collective effort by our people in an extraordinary time. But we can't let up. We're not out of the woods yet. Every day sees us closer to getting through the immediate crisis so that we can focus on recovery. I'd like to touch briefly on our supply chain and our ongoing focus to ensure that the products people rely on are getting to where they need to be. Yesterday, I met with representatives from the trucking sector as well as others involved in the supply chain logistics of our province. I met to hear directly from those companies on the ground. It was primarily a listening exercise. We asked what we're doing well as a province, what we can do better, and how government can best support the people and companies who are moving goods to communities around BC. Between Highway 3, our lone commercial truck route to the interior, and the detours that are available now through Washington State, we've now seen over 10,000 trucks move products around our province. CP Rail has been moving freight. CN is working toward a mainline reopening between Kamloops and Vancouver, expected this weekend. Airlines have continued to increase their cargo flights, and together this has made a tremendous difference. Because at the end of the day, it's the efforts of people I've just mentioned who benefit the most when the shelves of their local stores are fully stocked. So thank you to all those who've been obeying the essential travel orders and doing the right thing in their personal lives and in the way their families consume products that have been in short supply. From repairing roadways to finding creative ways to move products, this has truly been a remarkable effort by thousands and thousands of people. It has involved the unprecedented coordination between Indigenous First Nations governments, the federal and provincial governments, and local governments. Hundreds of companies have been involved, as well as labor groups. Everyone has pulled together for the common good, and it's been very, very special to witness this happen. We still have a long way to go to get our supply chains back to where we want to have them, but we're considering where we are just a few short weeks after the most unprecedented storm events in the province's history. The progress has been remarkable and inspiring. And I would now like to introduce the Minister of Agriculture, Lana Popham, to provide an update.
Good morning. Thank you for joining us. Yesterday evening, Minister Bibeau, the Federal Minister of Agriculture, and I held a roundtable discussion with 60 agricultural stakeholders that were representing many of the industries that have been affected by the floods. It was a great opportunity to hear directly about the concerns of those impacted and also about what the short-term and longer-term needs are. These conversations give us a better picture when it comes to putting an agri-recovery program together, and we will continue to get that finalized as soon as possible. Next week, Minister Bibeau and I plan to be on the ground together out in the Fraser Valley, weather permitting, of course, and I look forward to her joining me to have those face-to-face conversations that are so critical right now. As I mentioned yesterday, as the waters recede, we can get a better picture of mortalities and how it may affect production. Our hearts continue to be with the folks that are struggling with the very difficult situations that are happening right now. But last night we heard from Harvey Sasaki, the chair of the BC Chicken Marketing Board. He noted that we had 61 poultry premises within the evacuation zone, and amazingly, 97% of the laying chickens survived. We're seeing stories like that come out now. We might have been hearing about turkey shortages possibilities, but I can assure you that only 2% of the annual provincial production has been lost, and I think this bodes well as we head towards some holiday meals together. I'd like to recognize the collective efforts of all the poultry industry in pulling together and helping one another, as we've seen in other industries. I got a bit of good news this morning coming out of the Sumas Prairie. One poultry farm, Orania Farms, has finished clearing and sanitizing 2 of their large poultry barns. Fresh shavings have been laid, and they're expecting new chicks to be delivered on Monday. I'd just like to give them a huge shout out for all of the work they've been doing. They've been working around the clock. I also got some good news from the dairy industry this morning. 98% of cows from the Sumas Prairie survived the flood. This is really due to farmers working together and communities making sure that they had those farmers' backs. A dairy farmer I mentioned last week who spent 48 hours feeding his cows hay while they stood neck deep in water let me know that as soon as the waters were able to recede enough, the Abbotsford Rugby Association came in and helped them clean up those barns. They cleaned hundreds of stalls and then even assisted the family removing stuff from their soggy basement. And after they did that, they moved on to help other farmers. I've also heard that the hockey team did the same thing. That's an incredible reflection of how a community can get behind the efforts underway to help people get back up on their feet. Some have asked how we're assessing the number of farms right now that are in the evacuation areas. Using data from BC Assessment, we know that there's 817 parcels of land registered as some type of farm use as of yesterday. This includes 159 registered livestock and cattle premises that are registered through our ministry's voluntary premise ID program. I'd like to take the time to encourage ranchers and livestock operators who aren't registered with premises ID to do so. It allows us to keep track of things more quickly during emergencies. And just a reminder that although this is voluntary right now, it will be mandatory in 2022. Just to end off today, we know that these are stressful times, and we heard more stories at our roundtable last night with the federal minister. Minister Bibeau mentioned that she was expecting to hear a lot of sadness and despair, but what she heard was strength and commitment across the board. Farmers and associations made sure that she knew they were resilient. I wasn't surprised to hear that. Those are the farmers that I know and have grown to love over the years, and I couldn't have been more proud of them at that table last night. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. I would like to note that we are joined by Peter Brock, Executive Director of Emergency Management BC, for any questions that may apply. As a final reminder to any media on the phone line, please press *1 to enter the queue. First question today is from Kristen Robinson, Global News.
Thank you. Our first question is for Minister Fleming. What are the timelines on rebuilding Highway 8 from Merritt to Spence's Bridge, the Coquihalla from Hope to Merritt, and Highway 1 between Highway 11 and Spence's Bridge? How much is this going to cost, and where does the money come from? And our second question is for Minister Popham. I realize you just said that it sounds like not many BC turkeys perished in the floods. People are still seeing that the price of frozen turkey has increased in a big way. Just if you can comment again on the latest on turkey shortages and how might prices be affected in our province.
Great, thank you for the question. So when it comes to the Fraser Canyon Highway 1, Highway 8, and also the Coquihalla Highway, there is work being done, very intensive work on protecting the infrastructure that remains usable, also breaking rock and preparing to do the repair work, mobilizing material, mobilizing companies to do that work. So we're in the planning stage on what that will look like as well in terms of temporary access. We'll have more updates and a better idea of costs as we do more of the engineering assessments on what the full recovery looks like. We've talked in these briefings about the principle of build back better and climate adaptation for the age of extreme weather events that we're now in, and those are discussions that we're having with our federal counterparts as well as it relates to disaster financial assistance that the Prime Minister has discussed with our Premier about providing resources for our recovery too. So we don't have costs right now, but in terms of reestablishing access in areas of the Fraser Canyon, I can say that we have been working with communities like Cook's Ferry and the Shaken First Nations to try and preserve property. Our crews were able to save a house by putting in riprap to protect it from floodwaters. Yesterday, I know that BC Hydro is on the ground to restore power to those homes that currently don't have power yet. So there's a lot happening. There's roads being punched in that give some access. Some of them are Forest Service roads that are being upgraded and widened and cleared on a temporary basis, but we'll have more to share about what the temporary restored access looks like, as well as the permanent rebuilding plans in the days ahead.
Thank you for the question about turkeys. So 98% of our turkey supply is still intact. I am in contact with Kevin Klippenstein. He's the chair of the BC Turkey Marketing Board. But we are going to see some prices reflected around the complications of transport. And so unfortunately, it's taking longer to get things to where they're needed, and that's costing the trucking industry more. It's an unfortunate complication when we see a disruption like this, but hopefully we'll see in the new year, as things get more streamlined, that those costs will adjust.
Kristen, do you have a follow-up?
Yes, thank you. Just back to Minister Fleming on the costs. Is it fair to say that we're facing some substantial costs for these highway rebuilds? We're seeing on the RFQs that the projects being applied for are between 20 to 50 million or greater than 50 million.
Yes, it is fair to say that it will be very significantly expensive to rebuild our infrastructure and to build it to a higher, more resilient standard. But I don't have numbers about what the entire scale of damage is to all of our infrastructure. You know, in the case of the Coquihalla, there's about 130 kilometers of corridor that are affected, and entire sections that are broken that engineering teams are working on providing a temporary reuse plan on right now. Don't have costs for doing that, but as I've said before, we're not sparing any resources on the efforts necessary to get highway infrastructure in every part of the province that's experienced and sustained damage functioning again.
Next question is from Mira Baines, CBC.
Okay, so this question is, what's being done to support remote communities like Spence's Bridge? They've been without cell or internet service for weeks.
Yeah, so we're getting utility companies in to restore services like that. We are providing materials that will protect from the recent storm events and perhaps future storm events to keep that community from sustaining any further damage. We're working on road access with the Ministry of Forests and others. We've got road maintenance contractors in there. There are some communities where, because the rivers have changed, they're accessible by boat now. We're using helicopter and air support to get supplies into some of the most remote communities that right now don't have road access. But most importantly, we're coordinating with regional districts and First Nations government on what the plans will look like for restoring road access to connect to other communities and to rebuild the infrastructure that we've lost.
Mira, do you have a follow-up?
Yes. Has anyone been turned around or fined yet for not traveling for essential reasons? And if yes, how many tickets have been issued so far?
I don't have that data. To my knowledge, I know there has been increased enforcement on the Highway 3, and what we heard clearly from the trucking industry yesterday was they appreciate that. The industry and those representing drivers and the BC Trucking Association are working with our ministry to promote safety and driving to conditions on a highway that many drivers are unfamiliar with. That conversation also was about making the difficult job of transporting goods in BC better for those who are working in that industry. You know, we need more rest stops. It takes twice as long to get from Surrey to Karamias right now than it normally would. So we need more pull-off areas, and we identified ways to communicate in areas that don't have cell phone service, having more reader boards that allow drivers to anticipate the kinds of conditions they encounter. So those are some of the things that we're working on.
Our last question today is from Carl Yu, Black Press.
Hi, I'm just wondering, I know there's no flood watches and waters are receding, but it looks like there's about 15 centimeters of snow forecast for the Hope, Merritt, Princeton area. I'm wondering if that's any worries about that affecting flood recovery and that sort of thing in those areas.
Go ahead, Armel.
Hi, thank you for the question. Yeah, we are definitely anticipating snow in two different moments. One is going to be tonight into Saturday morning. We've got a snowfall warning for Hope, and the Coquihalla and Allison Pass could see up to 15 centimeters. And then we are also looking at deeper into the weekend, into Monday morning, where another system is sliding down the coast. We're now into a northwesterly flow, so snow is also likely, and perhaps even down to sea level. So definitely, without question, winter tires shifting into winter right now, following Drive BC for the conditions where you are, both on the island, on the south coast, and into the interior, will be crucial for the next few days.
Carl, do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, I'm just wondering though, like, will that accumulations of snow sort of affect flood situation, especially in the Hope, Merritt, Princeton area?
Go ahead, Armel. Yeah, my understanding from River Forecast Center and the briefings that we've been giving to various Emergency Management BC regional offices is that the cooler conditions are actually helpful in stabilizing the environment, and that we are seeing the conditions ameliorate. But certainly a question for Andrew Giles and the River Forecast Center in terms of the flooding piece.
Go ahead, Andrew.
Yes, indeed. Those cooler temperatures do help to reduce the inflow to some of those already affected river systems, and we'll see with the cooler temperatures, reduced melting of snowpack in the mid to high elevations, and also the sustained freezing temperatures in the interior of BC will help to reduce the water levels on the Fraser, which will help water to be drained more quickly from the Sumas Prairie.
That concludes today's information update. Please note our next scheduled update is Monday, December 6th.